American Civil War should not be an idea away from your knowledge, a war that brought an issue that was being tossed around and defined the nation of America for 90 years of its history. Up to that point, exploded into 700,000 dead souls and 4 million free lives. The war itself is interesting. A history lover can spend years in this war and will still find new generals, battles, and conspiracies. But we know the basic battles: Bull Run, Cold Harbor, Fredericksburg, 7 Days, Chattanooga, and the Big Three. Vicksburg, the longest battle of the war, not including sieges. Gettysburg, the deadliest battle of American history. And Antietam, the one we'll talk about today, the single deadliest day in American history. Why the battle began is fairly simple. The Confederate nation could not survive without foreign help. The agricultural nation was supported by an import-export economy, importing grain from the north and exporting cotton to Europe. With the Antietam Plan and the war with the Union, the South had little resources of its own, and the invasion of California was a failure. The only hope was to destroy the blockade. The Southern Navy was not the best, only seeing a sixth of the U.S. Navy taken. So the only hope for victory for the South was the Europeans, hoping that ideas of slavery would be outweighed by the need for Southern cotton. The South overestimated the actual market of cotton in Europe. Britain had a small cotton shortage for months, but Southern cotton was fighting with Ottoman and Indian cotton, who took advantage of the South in the Antietam Plan by selling to Europe. Still, the South's main General Robert E. Lee believed that by invading the North, multiple problems could be solved at once. One, it would show that Americans were going to lose, causing the Europeans to intervene. Two, supplies would be gained from the attack, helping the Confederate Army and the nation. The last reason was the hope that attack would scare the Americans, causing the congressional election to give the Democrats an advantage, hopefully ending the war. September 9th, 1862, Lee went to Maryland with his army. The basis of the attack was on Special Order 191, attacking in Maryland and West Virginia. The army would be divided in order to get more supplies. The Army of North Virginia was moving fast, and at this point, no major battle had happened, and the Union was bamboozled. That was the case until the Union found a cigar with the plants inside it. McClellan, with twice the force of Lee, began to attack some of the smaller contingents. When Lee got the word, he immediately freaked out and made plans to retreat to Virginia. His army was half the size of McClellan's. That did not matter as much, as McClellan is iconically recognized as a scaredy cat and often did not believe in attacking without absolute being sure. However, Lee only reversed his decisions as news from Harper's Ferry came in, seeing success. Lee now decided to reorganize at Sharpsburg with the Antietam Creek. Also, if you're asking, yes, this is another Bull Run Manassas situation. McClellan came by the 16th, and the battle would happen the next day. The first attack would happen at 5 a.m. with General Hooker attacking General Stonewall Jackson. With his first corps, Hooker attacked a 30-acre cornfield surrounded by woods, where fights for survival were seen on both sides. The cornfield's name is Miller's Cornfield. Seeing this, General Hood began to attack, and this seems like a good time to mention strategy, or simply the lack of one. The Confederate Army strategy is unknown. We can barely know if there was one. This seemed more like a fight for survival. The Union was are also unknown, but we can get a glimpse of the idea. The Union Army would attack across the field one at a time, slowly making the Northern Virginians lose their reserves, causing them to have nothing for a surprise flanking attack. So there's suspicions, but according to the strategy, Mansfield was up next with his 12th Corps, and with this intending target already in the fight, they supported Hooker. At 9 a.m., the rest of Mansfield's forces went into offensive at a strategic church named Dunker. The division from General Sumner's forces were to join him, but they were ambushed in the woods. Sumner's forces, the 2nd Corps, attacked in the center. A fight that would be known as Bloody Lane occurred, in which D.H. Hill tried to defend a bad defensive position, that being a wagon. His men fought, but eventually fell back, but Sumner also did due to how it was not defensible. Mansfield was forced to retreat from Dunkirk Church as well, as a constant barrages forced them to leave. If these two forces had not retreated, maybe we'll think more of General McClellan today, who had a huge part in supporting these retreats. At this point, Lee had to not only take out his reserves for multiple attacks, but also had to take troops from other forces, such as Longstreet. The next portion of the battle is most famous. Burnside, with his Ninth Corps, were to take a bridge, later to be honored in his name. Longstreet was not confident with the fight to come, with this diminished force, so he proceeded to retreat from the bridge, only leaving 500 Georgians in order to defend the bridge, led by Robert Toombs. The fight for the bridge lasted 3 hours, where Burnside would later remark, General Toombs held the bridge and defended it most gallantly, the driving back repeated attacks, and only yielded it after the forces brought against him became overwhelmed and threatened his flank and rear. From that statement, you can hear that another part of Burnside's force went over the river downstream, and now Toombs had to retreat. By 1 p.m., the bridge was Burnside's. Burnside proceeded to leave a force to protect the bridge, while other attacks the bulk of Longstreet's forces. But soon, the so-called strategy would fall apart. Returning from Harper's Ferry, A.P. Hill's forces became the savior to the Confederates. As the Ninth Corps attacked the main part of the Longstreet's forces, A.P. Hill's force attacked the flank and supply lines of that force. Meanwhile, the rest of Longstreet's forces attacked the bridge. These two things forced Burnside to retreat. With this, the day's fighting was over. The only gains were made by Hooker, though it was not important anymore. Both forces initially planned to fight the next day. Robert E. Lee planned to take the force. Only in the morning did Lee decide to retreat after being convinced by his officers. McClellan did not plan to pursue the Confederates. However, the fight would launch the Emancipation Proclamation, causing Europe to move away from the Civil War. The battle is and continues to be the largest loss of life in a singular day in U.S. history, seeing 3.6 thousand dead out of 22,000 casualties.